I think women should take the issue of mentoring seriously. And indeed, those who have reached the height must not behave like the queen bee, sitting in solitary eminence at the top and not encouraging others to interact with them and how they achieve such heights.
A woman characterized by a charisma, vision, and golden standard of leadership. A woman described as an intellectual hero by many. A woman principled and unmatched. A mentor and a mother indeed.
The Department of History, University of Ibadan was established in 1948, and since then we've had quite a number of prominent historians. Professor Bolanle Awe is one of them. She participated actively in the development of curriculum in the department, and quite a number of body scholars benefited from her.
Professor Bolanle Awe is the first female lecturer, indigenous female lecturer in the Department of History, University of Ibadan. And she has been a role model for a number of young scholars because we had to read her works so that we could have a good grasp of women and gender history in Nigeria and in Africa. For example, Professor Bolanle Awe's edited book, Nigerian Women in Historical Perspectives, gives us a kind of prototype to understand how to study women and how to understand women in our society. She brought together a group of scholars who studied women in various ethnic groups across Nigeria, from the pre-colonial even to the post-colonial period. Now, these women, the collection of their life histories actually helped us in understanding how we can research women even in the 21st century. And at a point in time in the 1970s, Professor Bolanle Awe wrote an article, I think it was a chapter in book, about the Iyalo Day in traditional political institutions. That work also gives us ideas on how to study women in our society. Beyond that, by the 1980s, Professor Bolanle Awe was part of the movement that actually ensured that women studies was mainstreamed into the curriculum of universities in across Nigeria.
We have benefited so much from her, not only at a personal level, but also in the department. You know, she began her career in this university with us in the Department of History. And so she represented for women in this university that great roadmap that ultimately defined intellectual traditions in this university.
Born Bolanle Fájẹ, Mrs. Bolanle Awe has been given so many titles. Amongst them all, she was referred to as a woman of vision, an ideal feminist, an horror historian, an activist, and a mother indeed. She never fell short of all she was and is referred to as. She was born in Ilesha, Osun State, 1933. She attended St. James School, Okebola, Ibadan. Had a secondary education in CMS Girls School, Lagos, and then back to Ibadan to attend Kodati Girls School, which is known as St. Anne's School, Molete, Ibadan. After getting a school leaving certificate, Dr. Bolanle Awe attained a A-level in Cambridge at the Pearl School for Girls. She got a master's degree in history from St. Andrews University in Scotland. Dr. Awe, then Fájẹ, decided to study African history in Oxford as a postgraduate degree, even when there was a lot of prejudice against the study of African history by many professors at that time. Nothing would derail Dr. Awe from what she wanted, even though it was repeated by people around her that there was nothing like African history. She had to prove them wrong, and she did, obtaining a doctorate in history, specializing in history of Ibadan. She advocated for an African history beyond the history of Europeans in Africa. In her words,
was the fact that I had to show that it became a mission for me to show that there's something like African history and that we've got to talk about it. We've got to make people realize that there's African history and make people appreciate it. And and of course, when I started doing my own postgraduate work, especially I specialized in the history of Ibadan.
She returned to Nigeria and became a lecturer in University of Ibadan in 1960, and in 1976 she became a professor. She became a senior research fellow in the Institute of African History at the University of Ibadan.
By the grace of God, I've known Mama for well over 4 decades now, specifically from 1979-80 session as an undergraduate, during my first year as an undergraduate. Yes, the first time I came in contact with Mama, that was by accident in Trenchard Hall. There was a program at the Trenchard Hall that day. And while we were seated, I saw a young woman in her middle ages who walked past us, and people were whispering, "Oh, that's Professor Bolanle Awe, that's Professor Bolanle Awe." So we sat down and we saw Mama walk straight towards one of the traditional rulers, and Mama knelt on her knees. It was something that actually struck us, and it gave us an impression. And ever since, I've noticed that Mama Bolanle Awe has been somebody that respects Yoruba culture and African culture generally. Then, of course, beside that, as a postgraduate student, I audited a course at the Institute of African Studies, and that provided an opportunity for me to attend some of their seminars at Draper's Hall. And we were fascinated by Mama's contributions. Yes, the fertility of her mind, her insightful contributions, and of course the way she encouraged younger ones. She encouraged us.
At a point in time, I think at the conference of the Historical Society of Nigeria in 1986, she and Nina Imba and other women organized a panel to discuss how women's history can be mainstreamed into curriculum and also researched better. And as at that time, few women were interested in studying women. But subsequently, by the late 1990s until contemporary times, a number of younger scholars in Nigeria have taken up studies on women. And a number of us that took up the studies on women, we have tended to look at the methodologies that Professor Bolanle Awe used. Apart from the use of oral histories, we have been able to also use the biographical method in studying women. And so far, we have been able to expand the scope of research on women and gender beyond just looking at biographies of women as elites, but we have moved on to look at what we call ordinary women. But then, the categories of ordinary women we talk about here, we have realized that women in the informal sector, especially market women, were ordinary women who were movers and shakers of events during their period, especially in the colonial period. Of course, what are we going to say about what happened in Lagos, Ibadan, and Abeokuta, where women, especially market women, collaborated with educated women to shape events in the colonial history of Nigeria. And for instance, in the example of Abeokuta, market women, for example, were able to eventually depose a king. And in Ibadan, market women were able to become formidable in the political climate at that point in time. So all in all, from Lagos to Ibadan to Abeokuta, we realized that women that we can consider as ordinary, not educated in the Western way, have influenced a lot of things in the society. And a number of us younger scholars have been able to study these women.
Sometimes between year 2008 and 2010, I came closer to Mama when, by the grace of God, I was privileged to embark on a project together with her. We jointly wrote about a biography on one of the Olubadans then. And Mama really served as a mentor. She served as a mentor. You gave her a manuscript. Within 48 hours, she will return the manuscript to you, and you will see the insightful comments and so on and so forth, and the way she was putting one through. But we came very, very close from 2013, when I was also privileged to serve as a biographer to her late husband, Emeritus Professor Olutayo Awe. By the grace of God, I am his biographer. And that brought us very, very close. Yes, Mama has been an academic to the core. She has been an administrator par excellence. She has been an activist. She has been a national figure and, of course, an international figure, especially in the area of gender studies and, of course, oral history. And she has left an indelible imprint in the annals of history. Today, we regard her as the matriarch of the history family in Nigeria. She has succeeded in mentoring several generations of younger historians. So at this auspicious occasion, I join numerous others in wishing Mama a happy 90th birthday, and I wish her longer life and a stronger health. Thank you very much.
My name is Asaolu Elizabeth, the final year student, History Department, University of Ibadan, Oyo State, Nigeria. My long essay is titled Professor Bolanle Awe and Western Development. Who is Professor Bolanle Awe? Professor Bolanle Awe is a woman with multiple career paths as a historian, an educator, a teacher, an administrator, and a social advocate for women, and indeed human causes, all of which she has distinguished herself at and inspired many generations of scholars and young women. Awe is Nigeria's first female professor of history, one of the first few female lecturers in Nigeria, and the most towering pioneer of the women study of history in Nigeria. Professor Bolanle Awe has made unrivaled contributions to Nigerian female historiography, in particular and African history in general. During her illustrious academic career, Professor Bolanle Awe, a former professor of oral history at the University of Ibadan, was editor of the Journal of the University of Lagos School of African Studies, a visiting scholar to several universities within and outside Nigeria, a consultant to government and international bodies and agencies, as well as a member of several public and private sector boards. It is no exaggeration that Professor Awe's life is a veritable definition of a fulfilling academic career fused with commendable non-academic stints. At her core, the non-Nigerian is a researcher who focuses on solution-driven approaches to national and global problems, as evident in the post she has held as director at the Institute of African Studies with the Women's Research and Documentation Center, WADOC, University of Ibadan, and with organizations including MacArthur Foundation, UNESCO, and UNFPA. This work is important because it shows the impact of female involvement in history to Africa and Nigeria in particular. Further stresses on issues like feminism, patriarchy, women development, and cultural as well as historical heritage. It is also an addition to the existing body of literature on social, economic, political, and academic female input of the history of Africa, Nigeria, and Ibadan School of History in particular. The study feels a critical look now in the body of literature on the activities of the University of Ibadan and the universities in Nigeria, particularly Department of History. Professor Bolanle Awe Fájẹ, a historian, scholar, teacher, author, and gender analyst of high repute, her love for the lettered world has not waned. Through her pen and voice, she's worked tirelessly to inform and change people's erroneous belief, expectations, especially as pertain to women. The widely traveled intellectual colossus continues to win admiration and respect for her hard work, integrity, humane spirit, numerous achievements.
Okay. I'm Oluwakemi Abiodun, a reader in the Department of History and International Studies, Faculty of Humanities, Redeemers University, Ede. I first physically met Mama Professor Bolanle Awe at the celebration of Women's Day at Wardrock sometime around 2002. Before that, I had known so much about her from her works and in the press. From our discussion on that day, she was glad I was working on women. Around the time, Mama was expected to attend the biannual conference of the International Federation for Research in Women's History at the Queen's University, Belfast, Ireland. But she was no longer interested in traveling around, so she introduced me to the Federation, and I've been a member since then. Also at the time, I was in dire need of a supervisor for my doctoral program at the University of Ibadan. Since I knew she was one of the pioneers of women's history in Nigeria, I approached her to be my supervisor and she accepted. But then, UI no longer accepted supervision by retirees. So, Mama couldn't supervise me, and I'm glad that Dr. Kinta Principal agreed to supervise me. I have been attracted to Mama since then and visited her to discuss my research work with her. I have studied Mama's works and can state that, well, Mama has worked extensively in the areas of oral history, the history of Ibadan, and women's studies. I admire Mama's commitment to the documentation of Nigerian women's lives. I love her commitment to historicizing Nigerian women's lives. It is quite infectious, and ever since, that has been my dream, to continue to work on Nigerian women's lives.
So our legacy has endured over the years. We appreciate and commend her for the utilitarian value that she brought into historical scholarship.